My name is Cora Thayer, and I am 64 years old. Last July, my son's new in-laws invited me to their summer house on the Maine coast for the 4th of July weekend. 3 days, 4 dinners. A view of the Atlantic they described as priceless every time the light changed, and a language they were completely certain I could not follow. They used it at the front door and over dinner and in low voices on the back porch with their shoulders turned just enough to feel accidental. They called me, in that language, the sweet little nursery lady who kept the books. They refilled my wine glass without asking. Not one of them asked me a single question about myself that entire weekend. By Saturday evening, I had heard everything, every word. And what I did with it the following Thursday, with their attorney copied on every page, is the only reason I am telling you this at all. Welcome back to Brave Mom Stories, where the quietest woman at the table is usually the one who wrote the contract. Drop a comment if you've been there, and please subscribe. The invitation came from my daughter-in-law in a text message with 3 exclamation points and a confetti emoji. She wrote, "We would love to have you. It'll be so relaxed. Just family." Her parents' house is in Kennebunkport on a private road off Ocean Avenue that the GPS cannot find on the first try. There is a name on a wooden sign by the gate. I noticed that. People who name their houses and post the sign out front are telling you something about how they see themselves. My son called the same night to make sure I was coming. He is 38 years old and still does the thing he has done since he was a teenager, where his voice goes up at the end of sentences when he wants me to say yes without making me feel like I'm being asked. Mom, they really want to get to know you. Not him. They. I told him I'd make the drive. It's 4 hours and 40 minutes from our home in Montpelier, Vermont, straight east on Route 2, and then down through the coast towns. I have made drives like that alone since March of 2021, which is when my husband Virgil died in the parking lot of our nursery with a coffee thermos in his hand and a list of what needed to be watered before noon. I stopped at a farm stand outside Rockland and bought a flat of beach roses in terracotta pots, because you do not arrive at someone's home empty-handed, and because I know what grows in salt air. Nobody moved them from the front steps all weekend. The Hartwell house sits on a bluff with the ocean behind it and a gray shingled facade that has been weathered into something that looks intentional, the way old money learns to stop appearing as though it tried. 7,000 square feet, give or take, wraparound porch, a heated pool no one was using, a kitchen that opens into a great room with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the water. I arrived on Friday afternoon. My son's mother-in-law met me at the door in a linen sundress that looked like it had never once seen a dryer, which I have always considered a particular kind of wealth. She kissed the air beside both my cheeks and said something to my daughter-in-law in French. I did not react. I want to be very clear about that because it matters later. I set my bag down and said the drive had been easy. There had been construction on 95 that cost me 20 minutes. Nobody asked. My son's father-in-law came through from the kitchen with an open bottle of Sancerre and poured me a glass before asking whether I wanted one. He is 68, silver at the temples, with a voice designed for conference calls. The kind of man who makes you feel warmly attended to before you realize you've said nothing about yourself. Here is the part they never thought to ask about. In 1983, I enrolled in French at the University of Vermont because it was the only language course that fit between my landscape architecture lectures and my Tuesday lab. I stayed with it for 3 years. In 1986, the same year Virgil and I started Thayer Nursery out of a rented greenhouse in Essex Junction, I spent 6 weeks in Grenoble at a plant cultivation seminar, the only such program in North America and Europe that covered alpine ground cover propagation in genuine depth. The other attendees were French, Belgian, Swiss. I was the only American. I kept up. When I came home, I kept a French horticultural dictionary on my desk for 20 years. I don't keep it there anymore. It's on my nightstand because Virgil gave it to me and I am not ready to move it. In 1991, I sat for my professional landscape architect licensure examination. The license is issued by the state, requires documented field experience, and authorizes me to design, certify, and stamp landscape plans on commercial and public projects across New England. Virgil framed the certificate himself, level and centered. It still hangs in the main office at Thayer Nursery, next to the photograph of our first greenhouse before we built the second bay. So when my son's mother-in-law spoke French at her own front door, I understood her, all of it. Dinner Friday was 8 of us at a table built for 12. My son's in-laws, my son and daughter-in-law, a couple from 3 houses down who were genuinely pleasant, their college-aged son who was devoted to his phone, and me at the end with a wine glass I was using mostly to give my hands somewhere to go. My son's mother-in-law asked what I did before retiring. I opened my mouth. My son answered for me. Mom was the business side of the nursery, he said. She handled all the paperwork. There was a small appreciative murmur around the table. The kind that doesn't cost anyone anything. I could have corrected him. I have not corrected him in 3 years, which is how long it's been since I stepped back from day-to-day operations. And the short versions is always easier. And the short version is wrong. My son's mother-in-law leaned toward my daughter-in-law and said in French, clearly and without lowering her voice, that she had been afraid they would spend the whole evening talking about plants. My daughter-in-law laughed. The table laughed because it follows her laugh, which is how a table works. I took a sip of wine. The seafood pasta was excellent. My son's father-in-law raised a glass to new partnerships, and everyone clinked. My son looked at the tablecloth when he did it. I noticed. I filed it. Filing things is what I do instead of reacting. It has taken me most of my life to decide whether that is a strength or a habit I picked up from necessity. I have decided it is both. Saturday morning, I came downstairs at 6:30 with Virgil's French dictionary and a Colette novel I'd been reading slowly all summer, and sat in the great room where I could watch the ocean go from gray to silver to blue. My daughter-in-law came down at 7:15 in a robe, with her hair already done, which I have never once managed at any age, and picked the dictionary up off the coffee table before I could say a word. She carried it to the built-in shelves and slid it in spine inward, so it showed only the page edge. "So it won't leave a ring," she said pleasantly. There was a coaster 4 inches from where the dictionary had been. Then she looked at the chair I was sitting in and tilted her head with a sympathetic expression. "You'll be so much more comfortable in the reading corner," she said. "It's better for your back." The reading corner faced the fireplace. The fireplace faced away from the ocean. I thanked her and moved. She is 31. She has the specific ability to rearrange a room while explaining to you that the rearrangement is for your benefit. By 7:20, she had moved my book, my seat, and the direction I was facing, and she had done every bit of it with a warm smile and a concerned voice. "You just relax, Cora," she said. "This weekend is about you." Then she went out to the porch with her mother, and neither of them came back inside for an hour. Late Saturday afternoon, I was sitting in a deck chair with a glass of wine. Someone kept refilling without asking when my son's father-in-law stepped onto the porch side of the house with his phone to his ear. He stood with his back to me because the windbreak was on that side. Not because he was aware I was there. He was speaking in French to someone named Henri about a new entity's registration and said that the paperwork was in order and that the signature would happen this weekend. He used a word for the person whose signature was needed. The word he chose was a diminutive, a small word, the kind you use for something you don't think of as an obstacle. I held my wine glass by the base and looked at the Atlantic. It is a big ocean, and it looked it. I did not know exactly what I was holding yet. I knew only that there was a document and a plan and a weekend that had been organized around both. I have been in rooms where people talked past me before. The first time was 1988, at a nursery trade show in Montreal, where 3 male buyers spent 40 minutes negotiating in French across the table as if I hadn't driven 6 hours to be there. I flew home and enrolled in continuing French education at Burlington Community College the following Tuesday. I promised myself on that drive home that it would not happen to me again. I sat on that porch and I did not say one word, not yet. Sunday evening, After a dinner where my son's father-in-law told a long story about sourcing Belgian boxwood for a hotel lobby in Miami, he brought out papers. 2 pages, squared up on the dining table, the way a waiter sets down a check that has already been added. He slid them toward me with a pen laid across the top. His attorney had drafted it, he said. Roland, he called him, and I am keeping that name because I want you to understand there was a lawyer involved from the first day. Just a consent for a small corporate restructuring, he said. Formality, really. I put on my reading glasses. I keep them on a chain since 2002. I read the document the way I have read documents for 35 years, which is slowly and out of order, beginning with the recitals, because the recitals are where people tell you the truth by accident. The document was a unanimous shareholder consent to share reclassification. It would convert my son's 45% of Thayer Nursery from Class A voting shares to Class B non-voting participating shares, with a concurrent issuance of new Class A voting shares to Hartwell Botanicals LLC, a Delaware entity formed 2 months earlier. 3 things arrived in my head simultaneously, and they arrived in this order. My son had agreed to this without telling me. The formation date on Hartwell Botanicals was May 14th. And whoever drafted this document had read our shareholder agreement very carefully because Section 8.3 of the Thayer Nursery Shareholder Agreement, written by our attorney in 1987, and restated in the 2003 amendment that my son signed at my kitchen table when he was 22 years old, requires the prior unanimous written consent of all Class A shareholders for any reclassification of shares. I hold 55%. I am listed as a corporate officer and director. Without my written consent, no reclassification is valid. They needed my signature. I set the pen down gently. I said I had left my reading glasses in the car. I was wearing my reading glasses, on my nose, on their chain. He had not looked at my face for long enough to notice. I said I would go through it tomorrow. He said it was honestly just a formality. I said then Monday wouldn't hurt it. I said good night. I took my glass of water upstairs. I did not sleep. Around midnight, I heard voices in the kitchen below the guest room. Old houses carry sound. My son's mother-in-law said in French that she was not worried. She said the woman didn't understand the document anyway. Then my son's father-in-law, in English, because he does the important things in English. Roland says, once the reclassification clears, we're clean to open with Anka's consortium by August. A pause. Then the mother signs what's put in front of her. I lay on my back and counted the ceiling beams. There were 6. I counted them more times than that. At some point in the counting, I understood what the entire weekend had been. I packed my bag at 6 in the morning and was on the road before anyone else came downstairs. The fog was sitting on the water, and the bluff was nearly invisible from the road. I will give them this. It was one of the most beautiful mornings I have seen in years, and I saw all of it alone. My son came out the side door in bare feet as I was loading the trunk. You're leaving early, long drive, I said. He asked if I was all right, in the voice he uses when he wants the answer to be yes, so we can go back inside. I closed the trunk and turned around. Did you agree to reclassify your shares? He blinked twice. It's a restructuring, he said. Dalton's attorney walked me through the whole thing. It's completely standard. Did you read Section 8.3? Section 8.3 of what? His face said. He had signed a partnership agreement at my kitchen table 16 years ago. He had a pen in one hand and a slice of apple pie in the other, and he turned 4 pages without reading them. And I let him because he was 22, and I thought there would be time to go back through it together. I looked at him for a moment. You knew I speak French, I said. He went red from the collar up. He has done that since he was 8 years old. I didn't think it would come up, he said. I got in the car. I drove west through the coast towns and then inland on Route 2. I did the arithmetic a person doesn't want to do about their own son's choices. I was not angry. Anger is expensive, and I am 64 and I understand what things cost now in ways I didn't at 40. I did not go home. I drove to Thayer Nursery and pulled into the yard at 7:50 in the morning with the gate locked. I have had a key to that gate since 1986. I let myself in the side door and turned on the lights in the main greenhouse and stood in the smell of wet soil and fertilizer and warm morning air, which is the smell of 37 years. The fireproof file cabinet is in the back office, behind Virgil's desk, which nobody has moved since 2021. I opened it and took out the second executed original of our shareholder agreement and sat down in Virgil's chair with the desk lamp on. Section 8.3. No reclassification of any class of shares shall be effective without the prior written unanimous consent of all holders of shares of such class then outstanding. I read it out loud. You catch more in a document when you make your mouth do the work. Monday afternoon, I called Rhea Lundquist, who does corporate work for family-held businesses in central Vermont and has the manner of someone who has seen most things twice and finds them equally unsurprising. She read the relevant sections on speakerphone and said, without moving her face, "This clause is enforceable." Then she said, "Has it ever been exercised?" I told her about Virgil's brother, who had held 20% of Thayer from 1992 until he sold it back to us in 2006 under this exact section at the price the agreement specified, with a lawyer on his side who reviewed it for 2 months and told him to take the check. She said, "Then it isn't theoretical." She walked me through what the reclassification was designed to accomplish. My son would retain economic participation but lose voting rights. Hartwell Botanicals would become the sole Class A holder outside of me, meaning all operational authority over a company I co-own would transfer to a man whose previous import entity had a suspended customs bond. She said this, without editorializing, "The way you state a fact that speaks clearly enough. Without my knowledge, without my consent, and in direct violation of an agreement I had drafted myself." She asked what I wanted. I said, "A formal written objection, certified mail, to my son as a shareholder, to the company, and a courtesy copy to Roland in Portland." She asked how fast. I said, "Before Thursday." Tuesday morning, I called Edmund Parrish, who has done the books for Thayer Nursery since 1994, and whose voice carries the same register whether he is telling you good news or bad. I asked him for the current shareholder equity summary. He had it to me by afternoon. Tuesday afternoon, I called Amsterdam. It was evening there. I have bought specialty Dutch stock from Ankie Visser's family wholesale consortium since 1997. Tulip varieties, Belgian boxwood, Cotinus cultivars for premium landscape clients. And we have known each other across 26 years of trade shows, seasonal orders, and one very long conversation in 2009 about a container that sat in Baltimore for 3 weeks because someone had transposed 2 digits on the phytosanitary certificate. I knew her daughter before she was tall enough to reach the warehouse shelving. We talked for 20 minutes about summer stock prices and her son's new job and the state of Buxus sempervirens this season. Then she paused and said carefully, "Cora, a man in Maine has been calling my office. He says he is forming a new botanical import company. He listed Thayer Nursery as an affiliated partner on the inquiry form. He would like us to open an account with his new entity. He has your son's surname by marriage." I did not say anything for a moment. She said, "I told him we would need to verify the affiliation with the nursery directly before proceeding. That is why I have not called him back." I said, "Ankie, please don't." She was quiet for 2 seconds. Then she said, in French, "I thought something wasn't right. He called us a consortium. We are a family. He doesn't know the difference." I answered her in French. We finished the conversation in French. She told me she would be in Boston in August for the New England Nursery and Landscape Association trade show. I told her I would see her there. Then I told her one more thing, and she listened without interrupting. Thursday morning, Rhea's office produced the notice. Formal written objection to proposed share reclassification of Thayer Nursery and Landscape Inc. Section 8.3. Void without unanimous consent. Demand to cease and desist from any further steps toward the reclassification. Certified mail, return receipt requested. Addressed to my son at the house, to the company at the nursery, and a courtesy copy to Roland's office in Portland. I drove it to the post office on Elm Street myself and stood in line behind a man buying stamps in bulk. The tracking number ended in 0389. Expected delivery Monday morning. Friday afternoon, my daughter-in-law texted. Sunday's 4th of July party was still on, and her father had an exciting announcement. Sparkler emoji. I looked at the message for a while. I thought about what I had done and what I had not done and what I was going to do next. I had not decided to walk into a room and confront anyone in front of 40 people. That is not how I am built, and it has never once been how I get anywhere. What I had decided was that I had been invited to a party. Certified mail moves at the pace of a federal agency that does not care about anyone's holiday weekend. Whatever happened Sunday, the envelope would land Monday morning with or without me. I could not have stopped it if I had wanted to. I did not want to. I typed back one word: yes. There were about 40 people on the Hartwell lawn Sunday afternoon. String lights not yet turned on. A tent over the long table. Families from along the road. A couple of contractors from Portland my son's father-in-law had been courting. 2 women from a botanical design studio who had driven up from Boston. I arrived at 4:15 in a linen jacket I've owned for 9 years because it has never let me down. I brought another flat of beach roses. A neighbor with paint still on her hands put them in a clay pot by the gate and said they were exactly right for this soil. That was the nicest 60 seconds of both weekends combined. At 4:30, my son's father-in-law stepped up on the porch stairs and addressed the lawn. He talked about partnerships, about the future of specialty botanical supply in New England. He said the name, Hartwell Botanicals, in partnership with Thayer Nursery, launching this fall. My daughter-in-law put her hand on my son's arm and smiled wide. My son stood with both hands in his pockets and his eyes on the grass. I looked at my son and I thought, "You are 38 years old." The gate opened. Anki Visser came through it the way she comes through every trade show floor, with direction and mild impatience about the distance between here and the destination. She is 61, linen shirt, reading glasses pushed up into her hair where they seem to live permanently. My son's father-in-law saw her and moved through the crowd with both arms already opening, saying her name with the French inflection he cultivates. She walked past him. She came straight across the lawn to where I was standing near the garden border, and she took both of my hands and kissed me on both cheeks and began talking in French, fast and warm. The Cotinus order from last spring, the tulip variety we had waited 18 months to get the right stem length on. Her daughter, who used to call me the American lady who is never wrong about the root ball. And I answered her in French. All of it, fast, because that is how she moves through a conversation, and you keep up or you fall behind. A party does not go silent. What it does is drop a register. 40 people kept talking, and everyone got quieter at once, as if a furnace somewhere had shut off. The contractors from Portland turned all the way around in their chairs. My son's mother-in-law was standing near the drinks table with a bottle in her hand. I watched the expression leave her face in stages. Anki looked around at all of them and said, in English, "Why is everyone so quiet? She is the only person here I came to see." My son's father-in-law recovered quickly. 13 years running a European showroom teaches a man how to get a room back. He laughed and reached behind him to the table where someone had placed the 2-page document beside a bowl of strawberries. The same 2 pages. At a party. On a Sunday afternoon. He picked up the pen and stepped toward me. "While we have everyone here," he said, "and Roland is just inside, let's make this official tonight." I set my wine glass down on the table beside me, very gently. The lawn had already dropped 1 register. In the quiet that was already there, 40 people heard it. Then I said 1 sentence in French, and I looked at my son's mother-in-law when I said it. About half the lawn understood it. A woman named Bev from 2 houses down did not, so I said it again in English for her. "Don't worry, she doesn't understand anything." My son's mother-in-law's mouth opened. "You said that at your front door on Friday evening," I said. "You said it Saturday afternoon on the deck 6 feet from my chair. And you said it again after midnight on Saturday in the kitchen, through a floor register that runs straight up into the guest room." I was not loud. I want that understood. I have never once gotten anywhere by being loud. I stated it the way you state a fact. My son's father-in-law still had the pen. Cora. His voice was the voice you use to reason with someone you believe will come around if the explanation is patient enough. You don't need to understand every detail of the legal side of this. Section 8.3, I said. He stopped. The shareholder agreement of Thayer Nursery and Landscape Incorporated, dated April 2, 1987, restated November 14, 2003. Section 8.3 requires the unanimous prior written consent of all Class A shareholders for any reclassification of shares. I hold 55% of the Class A shares. I have not consented. The reclassification is void. I looked at Roland, who had come through the side door and was standing near the porch in a polo shirt and a color I had not seen on a person's face before. My attorney mailed my formal written objection Thursday morning. Certified mail, return receipt requested. Tracking ends in 0389. It was delivered this morning at 9:14. Roland said, measuring his words, the objection is procedurally defective. The 1987 agreement predates the current corporate structure. The 2003 amendment restated Section 8.3 in full, I said. My son signed the restatement at my kitchen table. He was 22. He had a pen in one hand and a slice of apple pie in the other. I watched him sign 4 pages. The amendment is valid. Rhea Lundquist's response letter will explain the rest of it. My son's father-in-law brought his hand down, flat on the table, hard enough to jump the strawberry bowl. He got loud. About investment. About what Peyton deserved. About 3 years of careful planning that I had just dismantled in front of his neighbors, his colleagues, his family. My son's mother-in-law went the other direction, which I find harder to watch, quiet and hurting and blame moving through her voice like weather. We opened our home to you, she said. We welcomed you. My daughter-in-law said my name 4 times, each time in a different register. I did not raise my voice. I turned to Anke. In French, I asked her to explain her consortium's account policy for new importers. She answered in French, simply, 3 years of clean CBP compliance history required for new accounts. New entities begin at 0. The compliance history of affiliated principals is reviewed. She said it without looking away from my son's father-in-law. He understood every word. I watched it register in his face. I built the company whose shares you wanted to reclassify, I said. I wrote the agreement that makes it impossible for you to do so without me. And I have been doing business with Anke's family for 26 years, which is longer than you have been aware that my son exists. I looked at Roland. If you have a real legal argument, you will file it. If you don't, you'll write letters. I look forward to reading them. One of the Portland contractors set his glass on a side table and walked to his truck. His colleague followed him 2 minutes later. That is what it sounds like when a business relationship leaves a room. Not loud, just a screen door and gravel under tires. My son followed me out to where the lawn meets the bluff. The ocean below was flat and going gold in the late afternoon. Somebody's boat was making for the harbor 3 docks down. Mom, please. I turned around. Did you read it? They said it was standard. It is not standard. I waited. Did you know I speak French? He looked at the water. Yes. I nodded once. I had what I needed. So did he. Here's what happens now, I said. The reclassification fails. The objection is valid, and no attorney is going to tell your father-in-law otherwise once they look at the 2003 restatement. And in 30 days, I am going to put an offer in front of you to buy back into this company at the same terms your father and I gave you in thousands signs. Same price, same structure. Because you are good at this work and it is half your inheritance and I am not going to take it from you. He stared at me. What's the condition? You come to the table by yourself, I said, and you read it before you sign it. From the porch, my daughter-in-law called his name. My son turned his head toward the porch. Not his feet, just his head. But I had my answer before he moved, and so did he, and we both stood there on that grass in the gold light knowing it. Go on, I said. It's your party. I meant it kindly. I meant it completely. I drove the 4 hours home with the radio on. The fog had burned off the coast, and the mountains were clear all the way back into Vermont. The certified mail receipt came back Wednesday, signed for at 9:14 in the morning. Roland sent one letter arguing the objection was procedurally defective. Ria answered it with a single letter and one attachment, which was a photocopy of the 2003 amendment signature page with my son's name on it in his own handwriting. Nobody filed anything in court. People with a real case file. People without one write letters and wait to see what you do next. Anki sent my son's father-in-law a 2-sentence email the following week. His new entity had no CBP compliance history, and the compliance record of affiliated principals did not meet the consortium's threshold for account approval. She would not be opening an account. Hartwell Botanicals LLC was registered in Delaware on May 14th. It filed for dissolution on September 3rd. I know because the records are public and because I am the kind of woman who looks things up. My son comes to the nursery every day. He is good at the work. He has his father's eye for what can be saved and what needs to come out. We eat lunch on Thursdays. We do not talk about the agreement. There is a sealed envelope in my desk drawer addressed to him with a 1-page offer inside. The terms are the same as 2009. It is good for 5 years. He knows it exists. That is the point of it. He has not opened the gate yet. The gate stays open in the meantime. Virgil's French dictionary is on my nightstand. On the inside front cover, in his handwriting, in pencil. For the woman who already knows where to look. I have not put it away. I have stopped putting it away for company. Here is the only piece of all of this I would hand to anyone else. When someone tells a room that you don't understand what's in front of you, that sentence has never once been about your understanding. It is only about how much they will say while they believe it is true. And if you can hold still a little longer, they will keep talking, and they will keep planning, and eventually they will hand you the paperwork themselves. That is all it ever takes. The quiet, and knowing what you signed. Welcome back to Brave Mom Stories. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.